أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear viewers and listeners, my name is Abdul Roqeeb Salman and I am your host for today's show, Tomorrow's Voice. Welcome to another episode of Tomorrow's Voice. Right now I am by myself, but inshallah we'll be having a special guest. We know him, but to us all, to me, he is very special. Inshallah, he'll be joining us in the next 5-10 minutes, inshallah. Until then, it is me by myself, and I'll just be introducing the topic and perhaps starting with one or two points, inshallah. First of all, we apologize for not being consistent and not being on the show for a while now. We've been trying to sort out a few things, trying to sort out a rota, to sort out amongst ourselves to be more consistent with our show. So, inshallah, we'll try to do that. And as Zain kept on mentioning, who's another host, there's going to be a fee tax because we had a target of reaching 40 shows. I'm not certain if we're on target. It doesn't seem like it, but at the end of this year, we will have a review, and I'm sure someone will do the forfeit. He's been pressing that I'll do the forfeit, but maybe we'll all do the forfeit together, but we'll keep you posted, inshallah. So, what is today's topic? Today's topic is some advice from a scholar, or advice from scholars, scholarly advice. And who are these advice to? They are to the layman and to the student of knowledge. And I'll get onto the reason why I say the layman and the student of knowledge. Before we get into it, first of all, we have to understand what is a student of knowledge. Who is a student of knowledge? Are they identifiable? What are their characteristics? What are their traits? How do I say this person is a student of knowledge and this person isn't? So a student of knowledge is someone who, it's self-explanatory, who studies knowledge. But then you could ask, Abdul Roqeeb, everyone studies a bit of knowledge, don't they? But this isn't just any type of knowledge. First and foremost, it's Islamic knowledge. Before it's Islamic knowledge, first and foremost, it is beneficial knowledge. What is it? It is beneficial knowledge. Now, we've done a show in the past. I remember this because I was the one who did the show with another guest speaker, and it was about ilm and knowledge. And so, if you would like to watch that part, inshallah, you can check us out on YouTube and all our other social media sites. But I did a part about knowledge and what is knowledge. So first and foremost, talib al-ilm, the student of knowledge, is someone who studies beneficial knowledge. We have to make that distinction. There is knowledge that benefits you and there is knowledge that can harm you. So this is the type of knowledge a student of ilm learns, which is beneficial knowledge. Now, we're not just talking about any student of knowledge. For example, a Christian university student could be considered a student of knowledge. But in the Islamic setting, it is someone who studies Islam. And not just studies Islam, half-heartedly. Studies Islam with their entire soul and their entire being. They give to be able to study Islam. And to be honest, it's a privilege. It's an honor to be able to study Islam. Some people don't get this opportunity. Some people don't get this ability. And how could we not study our religion when, people over the years and centuries and decades have preserved our religion? They fought for our religion. 1,400 years plus before today, people were dying. People were struggling, people were fighting to be able to allow Islam to reach us. So then, how could we not study Islam? Will their efforts go to vain? No, we cannot allow that. As the Muslim Ummah, we have to study Islam. It is, first and foremost, it should be, at least someone should study Islam in our locality. And that's why we have our mashayikh, we have our sheikh, we have our, teachers. But it should be also an individual responsibility for all of us to study Islam, to study knowledge, to study the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It should be every single person's individual responsibility. And we're not saying you have to do it much. It can be in whatever capacity you have. It could be something small, maybe one ayah a day, learn a hadith a day, learn this, learn that. It doesn't have to be something major. It doesn't have to be taxing. When we say learn knowledge, it seems, so much to do, this and that. But it can be something as simple as that. It could be just a little thing today. So that is what knowledge is. That is what being a student of knowledge is. It's studying wholeheartedly with your life, with your soul, with your very being. Now, for some of us, we might not reach that level, but inshallah, we make an effort, and inshallah, we can reach that. But we should try today. So that is a student of knowledge, someone who constantly is trying to learn more about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, trying to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, trying to learn more about Islam. So then the question now is, who is a student of knowledge, or how do you know who a student of knowledge is? Now, a student of knowledge can be identified in with many criteria and many traits. But first and foremost, just to make it clear, anyone can be a student of knowledge. In fact, I would even go so far as to say we're all students of knowledge, as I mentioned, in some way or form, in some capacity. So, I myself, I'm a student of this masjid, for example. Our teachers are students of their teachers. Our students are students of, knowledge. They themselves are studying Islam. You can never be someone who's completed. You can't ever be like a scholar of knowledge, or a sheikh of knowledge. We're all students. Even the greatest of sheikh, they are also what? They are also students of knowledge, because knowledge isn't something that can be attained fully. No, we're always on this journey. We're always on this path to studying knowledge. We can't finish. It's a never-ending journey. So it's something that we can't just stop doing. Knowledge is something that we'll continue studying. It's a lifelong mission which we should all embark and we should all endeavor to be on. Before I continue, I would like to introduce a special guest. You know him, I know him, a very special guest to me, especially Malik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope you're well.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Welcome. It's good to see you. I'm not sure what time you called this, but we'll let you off.
It's just some tribulations on the way, but alhamdulillah, Allah makes the way.
Alhamdulillah. On your way to seek knowledge, alhamdulillah, Allah made it easy for you. Alhamdulillah. But no, it's good to see you here, Malik. I'll give you the rest of the show. Tafaddal. Bismillah.
Yeah. So as I was saying.
No, tell me, what were you saying?
Yeah, so anybody can become a student of knowledge, like you don't have to be like a great scholar, you don't have to be in such a university, such a, course or such, but you can just do it individually, yeah? It's all about your own individual goals and what you want out of that journey.
I must say, my guy came in 3 seconds ago and he's spitting haq.
One line out of your whole paragraph, and I thought I'd just go off that.
And interestingly, it was the last line as well. Anyway, so I was just introducing, who's a student of knowledge. How do you, find who's a student of knowledge? Can anyone be a student of knowledge? And as Malik rightfully reminded us, anyone can be a student of knowledge, and it's actually an individual responsibility. We should seek knowledge in some form, in some capacity. It doesn't have to be to the extent of some mashayikh out there. It could be just, within our family, we learn a hadith, something new, something to implement. And of course, as I said, we've done a radio session about knowledge, because I was doing it myself, and it is said that knowledge without action is batil. It's meaningless.
Of course.
It's meaningless. So you can't we're talking about knowledge, but of course we're talking about knowledge because there has to be action after it. You can't just learn this and not implement it. It's just lying around. It's doing nothing. It's collecting dust. So that's another segment. That's another point entirely. But we should be students of knowledge that learn knowledge, but then we act upon it. And people should. This is how you start seeing the difference between a normal person and a student of knowledge. Through what? Through their action. Not necessarily through what they're saying or no, that sort of thing. But they should behave different. They shouldn't just be a normal individual. They should behave different, because once you know that knowledge, once you know this is right, this is wrong, then we wouldn't be expecting a student of knowledge, for example, to be doing those things. Of course, we can all slip and fail, but they have that understanding, they have that awareness that some people might not, for example. So one of the ways you can discern a student of knowledge is through their action. They don't have to go, oh, by the way, I'm a student of knowledge.
If you didn't know.
As an FYI, I don't want to boast or anything.
Brag or anything,
I'm a student of knowledge.
I'm better than you.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have to say that.
Of course.
Through their action, you would say, this. You might not be able to say they're a student of knowledge, but you'd be like, this person is different. you look like a student of knowledge to me. What? But you should be able to tell from their action.
100%. And all this knowledge without any action, it could actually be harmful, right? Because one of the groups that are going to be thrown into hellfire first are the scholars that had all the knowledge yet they didn't practice on it, or they withheld the information from other people, right? So it's very important that if you have knowledge, and we all have knowledge, right? No matter what it is, we all have knowledge. It may be small, it may be insignificant, or whatever it is, but make sure to practice on it and don't forget it, especially when it comes to lessons from the Quran, especially. Because even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Yawm al-Qiyamah is going to complain that, oh, my ummah, ignored this Quran, right? And it's this, some people say like there's going to be a physical copy of the Quran that he's going to have or something like that. But some say it's not that. It's to show like how accessible Quran is to us, especially. You can have it in all sorts of forms, right? We really have no excuse in today's age, right? So if we ignore those lessons, and especially after we've learned them, that's even worse, right? So let's make sure to practice on whatever knowledge we have.
Definitely. We've talked about the student of knowledge. Now let's actually move on to the advices. This is something that was shared by our teacher. I remember because I took notes quite a while ago, actually, now that I think about it. I think it was during one of our Arabic intensives or something like that. I just decided to jot it down, decided not to delete it. Alhamdulillah. And it's been on my phone collecting dust. So I think this is a good opportunity to implement it. This is me, actionalizing it. That's not a word.
Actionalizing it, mashallah. It's good.
I need to.
We might have our own dictionary at the end of this, mashallah. Actualizing it, yeah?
No, there is. Anyways, that's
so actualizing it.
Okay. So as I said, there was a few advice that our teacher shared. I think it was either a PDF or from an actual book or something. But inshallah, we'll focus on a few. It is a long list.
Actually, before we get on to the great advices from this great scholar, right? Let me give my small advice that may not be relevant to everybody, but maybe some people may want to hear it, may be beneficial for them.
Yeah, we don't want to hear it. Moving on.
Anyways, so no, but the advice I was going to say is from the story of Prophet Nuh. If you look at his life and his whole story, the major things within his story, other than the great disaster that took place, is the fact that he preached for almost 1,000 years, right? And yet he only had a few people that followed with him, right? Now, some people view that as failure because his achievement was to get as many people onto the correct path.
You would think he had like plenty of time.
All of that time, yet he still only had a few, right? So, but we all know, and Allah has already said that he's successful, obviously, because he did what he was supposed to do, right? So it's all about your intention and how you try to achieve your goal. Even if you don't get the goal that you have in mind. So for example, if you say, oh, I'm going to take this course, and at the end of this course, I want to be fluent in whatever, right? Arabic. I want to be fluent in this. I want to comprehend Quran, every single word I hear of the Quran. I want like that, just to know every single meaning about it, right? That's great. Have those goals, right? Shoot for the star, shoot for the moon, whatever it is, right? But at the end of the day, if you don't achieve that exact goal that you had in mind, just know, first of all, we all plan, but Allah's the best of planners, right? And it's about your way to there. So if you did everything in your way to try achieve that goal, yet you still didn't achieve it, Allah didn't bless you with that blessing, it may not be a blessing. That's why he didn't bless you with it, right? So you should be thankful and do not think for a second that, oh, just because I didn't achieve it, all of my efforts were for nothing, right? Because every single little thing that you do, an atom's weight of good deeds, are all presented by Allah, and Allah never forgets, right? So I think it's very important. Do not get discouraged. If you're trying to achieve something and you don't see that goal, just know every single effort you're putting in, no matter how small it is, it's all going towards something.
MashaAllah, we have our own sheikh here, subhanallah. He came in and he decided a few scholarly advice from our scholar, alhamdulillah. And whilst you were speaking, it reminds me of like a proverb, an English proverb, and it goes along the line of, it's not necessarily about the destination, but it's actually about the journey. And if we get fixated on the destination, how can we enjoy the journey? Because students of knowledge, it shouldn't be something like really hard. It should be like sweltering and, tears. Well, there are some tears that come with it, I'm sure we understand. But I'm trying to say, it should be something enjoyable. It should actually be something, fulfilling. You're moving closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're learning more about your deen. So if we get so fixated on the destination, we actually lose the joy of being on the journey. And we might not reach that destination. We might not. And you're right. Allah may give us that ability. Allah may not. But at least we've started on that path. We're on that path. And, just another side point, which is we might go off track. We might stop for a while. We might start doing this, life, business, whatever comes in the way. But as long as we go back onto that path and we continue that journey.
And have big intentions. Even if you may think they're not realistic or whatever, be optimistic, right? And go for the big intentions. Because even if you don't make it, Allah takes you back to Him during the way, or anything happens, right? Allah will reward you then again according to intention, right?
So you might as well intend big things. Exactly.
Have intentions to do big things, have intentions to sacrifice a lot for the sake of Allah. Even if you don't end up doing it, as long as you're on that path, on the way to doing it, Allah will surely reward you for your intention, inshallah.
And we can go many places from here. I mean, I have one or two things to mention, but I will just mention one, which is that, if you have small intentions and if you fulfill that, then what comes after that? You're like, I just wanted to learn one ayah for, I have, let's say, a span of 30 years. I just want to learn one ayah of the Quran.
It's better than nothing.
Alhamdulillah. But then after you do that, because that's, more achievable, for example, after you do that, you're like, what comes next? So, definitely aim high. If you can't reach it, at least you're on the way. But if you aim low and you've reached it, there's this void. There's this what comes next?
Don't always have that mentality is better than nothing, right? Because everything is better than nothing. Like, it doesn't mean anything at the end of the day, right? At some points, it's relevant, but most of the time, better than nothing doesn't actually mean anything. It's just a way for you to
almost what's the word?
Excuse yourself.
There we go. Almost giving an excuse.
Yeah.
Anyways, before we go on the break in 4 or 5 minutes time, let's at least look at the first advice. Otherwise, we'll keep going and we won't get to the scholarly advice part. I should have perhaps done a little background on, I can't remember whether it was, maybe you might remember, it was a book or something. I remember it was either Sheikh was reading from a book or it was a PDF that he shared with us. I can't remember. So the very first one that I jotted down, it might not be the first one he mentioned, but the one I first jotted down was, interestingly, focus on learning the deen of Islam. Then, actually, it's 2 parts. We can I'll read it all first and then we'll dissect it one by one. Focus on learning the deen of Islam, then make sure to teach your children. I'll repeat that. Focus on learning the deen of Islam, then make sure to teach your children. Sheikh Malik, please take it away. Well, what are your first thoughts of this advice by the scholars?
The common things within our deen, like how to pray salah, the small surahs that you always read in salah and stuff like that. Don't leave that to the teachers. Teach it to your children, teach it to anybody that you have a chance to, because every single time they read those things, you get ajr from that, right? And your children are supposed to be like your source of goodness even after you've left the dunya, right? So
they're your sadaqah jariyah in a sense.
It's very important, especially learn it. This is the important thing. You learn it first. Even though you think, I've been taught by my teacher 50 years ago, whatever it is, I know it. No, revise it again, because there might be something that you're just doing out of habit and you just mixed it with the sunnah and whatever else and you think it's sunnah, but it's not. And then you teach it to your children and then they teach it and then it just carries on. Right?
So it's a double-edged sword in this kind of scenario. So it's important here, and that's the first part of the advice. Learn it. And of course, without learn it well, learn it properly, learn it, that sort of way, and then teach it, because once you've learned it well, then you can teach it the same. But if you learn it wrongly, or if you learn it incorrectly, for example, then you could be passing on that as well. So I guess that's why the scholars started with learn it for yourself. And of course, learn it well, learn it right. And as you mentioned, revise it. Don't just leave it. Don't just leave it there. And I think that's the problem we have. We don't mind learning something. But then the problem is keeping that up. For example, I might spend 10 minutes and learn a new ayah of the Quran. Alhamdulillah. 3 days later, what's that ayah that you learned? So it's definitely something we struggle with. I mean, I struggle with it. I don't know if anyone else does, but you might learn something. It's, alhamdulillah, this is interesting at the moment. 3 hours later, not 3 days later, 3 hours later, what did you learn? I'm not too sure. So it is important that we don't just learn and just leave it there, but we also revise from it. And, this is the whole topic. That was the introduction when we said the talib al-ilm, the student of knowledge. And what's the first thing the scholars mention? It's just that. Learning, because knowledge is important. We know the English phrase, knowledge is power. Knowledge, moves the world. You're someone, with knowledge. You have to have knowledge to be able to, have an impact. So that's why, I think many scholars, many people, they focus on knowledge, because without knowledge, you can't do action that is meaningful, because you can do action, yeah, but is it meaningful? Is it meaningful to you, first and foremost? Is it meaningful to others? Does it impact others? And of course, positively. It shouldn't be harmful knowledge. It should be beneficial knowledge. And there's so much more that we can say about that. Any other comments or?
Yeah, a thought just came to my mind when you said about how we learn things and then often don't revise them, we just forget them. I don't know if it's got any link. It
doesn't.
To like the academic kind of like GCSE A-level type thing, because you have to study multiple subjects, right, to find supposedly to find what you're good at and stuff like that, right? But then at the end of the day, if you look at it from like an outside perspective, you're learning all these things, and then once you're done the exam, you forget it. You leave it. You have no need to go back to it ever again. You stick to one thing, and then you just keep going, and then all of these other things, all of these years you've spent learning so many foundations, and then you're just dropping them down and not going back at them. So that's just a thought that came to mind. So let's try to get away from that mindset sort of thing, just to learn for an exam, rather than to learn to just keep on adding and improving onto those foundations and never leaving them aside.
I mean, that's a wonderful point, and inshallah we'll pick it up after break.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
अल्लाह ही अल्लाह किया करो, दुख न किसी को दिया करो, जो दुनिया का मालिक है नाम उसी का लिया करो। अल्लाह ही अल्लाह किया करो, दुख न किसी को दिया करो, जो दुनिया का मालिक है नाम उसी का लिया करो। अल्लाह ही अल्लाह। Just like a sunrise can't be denied, oh, just like a river will find the sea. Oh Allah, you're here, you're always near, and I know without a doubt that you always hear my prayer. सच की राह पे चला करो, दुख न किसी को दिया करो, जो दुनिया का मालिक है नाम उसी का लिया करो। अल्लाह ही अल्लाह। So many bright stars like diamonds in the sky, oh, it makes me wonder, anyone can be blind to all the signs so clear. Just open your eyes and I know without a doubt you'll surely see the light. तेरी ही दुनिया तेरी ज़मीन, ये कहकशां है तू है करीम मेरे मौला। सुन ले दुआ हम बेबस हैं तेरे बिना, रोशन कर जहां। ऐसा जुल्म न किया करो, दुख न किसी को दिया करो, जो दुनिया का मालिक है नाम उसी का लिया करो। अल्लाह ही अल्लाह। अल्लाह ही अल्लाह किया करो, दुख न किसी को दिया करो, जो दुनिया का मालिक है नाम उसी का लिया करो। अल्लाह ही अल्लाह।
طائر الأيك حلق في سمانه، واملأ الكون سرورا ونشيدا، فبناء اليوم قد طاب جناها، وبنت في العلا قصرا مشيدا. طائر الأيك حلق في سمانه، واملأ الكون سرورا ونشيدا، فبناء اليوم قد طاب جناها، وبنت في العلا قصرا مشيدا. للمعالي سوف نمضي بثبات، لنضيء الكون لا لن نحيدا، فلكم يا بناء كل حب ولكم يا بناء صغنا النشيدا للمعالي سوف نمضي بثبات لنضيء الكون لا لن نحيدا فلكم يا بناء كل حب ولكم يا بناء صغنا نشيدا ولكم يا بناء صغنا نشيدا طائر الأيك حلق في سماء.
In the heart of Peterborough, this is Salaam Radio.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
نون والقلم وما يسطرون ما أنت بنعمة ربك بمجنون وإن لك لأجرا غير ممنون وإنك لعلى خلق عظيم فستبصر ويبصرون بأيكم المفتون إن ربك هو أعلم بمن ضل عن سبيله وهو أعلم بالمهتدين فلا تطع المكذبين ودوا لو تدهن فيدهنون ولا تطع كل حلاف مهين هماز مشاء بنميم مناع للخير معتد أثيم عتل بعد ذلك زنيم أن كان ذا مال وبنين إذا تتلى عليه آياتنا قال أساطير الأولين سنسمه على الخرطوم إنا بلوناهم كما بلونا أصحاب الجنة إذ أقسموا ليصرمنها مصبحين ولا
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Welcome back to this session of Tomorrow's Voice. I'm your host, Abdul, and we have a special guest with us today, and that's Malik. Assalamu alaikum, Malik.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
So before the break, we were discussing, the topic, which is students of knowledge and the advices that, scholars have given to us as students of knowledge, but also as the layman, as the normal person. And we were discussing what is a student of knowledge? How do we find a student of knowledge? How do they behave? How do they act? We've mentioned that briefly, just saying how they would study the deen, study beneficial knowledge. And as I mentioned as well, we've done a segment on what knowledge is and that sort of thing. So maybe it might help for you to have a look at that on our social media websites. So before going on the break, I think Malik had a thought of how, we have to study, but we have to study in a certain way, not necessarily the way that they do it in the Western study, for example. For example, we've all been through the GCSE and, A levels. You study for an exam. Of course, in Islam, there's also study for exam. But our exam, there's like multiple exams. There's the ultimate exam, which we're all studying to achieve. These exams that we have in Islamic institutions and all that sort of thing, those are mini exams. These are mock exams, so they're a real exam. Because our knowledge and all the things that we learn for an exam, we still need it. We don't just ditch it. We still need it for the ultimate exam. However, the exams that we have here, once you've done it, alhamdulillah. Unless, for example, let's say you picked A-level chemistry and you're going to do chemistry at university, you're like, I might need to hold on to some of that knowledge.
Yeah,
but
just a little bit.
just a little, just a smidge. But if not, it goes in, cram, exam, out. Alhamdulillah. I mean, if you were to ask me 3 years ago, what do you remember about photosynthesis? I don't know. But we have to adopt an Islamic way of learning, not necessarily the Western way of learning, which is just like learning for that exam and then finishing. We are always trying to learn, and we're always trying to implement and pass this final exam. And we use these mini exams on the way, and we have to retain those knowledge. So we were just talking on the first advice, which was focus on learning the deen of Islam. Then make sure to teach your children. I feel like we've reasonably explained the focus on learning the deen of Islam, why knowledge is important, that sort of thing. Now, the second part, that is really important. That is really crucial. Then make sure to teach your children. Now, first and foremost, it doesn't say make sure to teach others, but I'm assuming, this can fall into that as well. But it specifically says make sure to teach your children. And I think we can unpack a lot from that, which is first and foremost, after it's you have to focus on your family. You have to teach your children. You have to raise them in an Islamic upbringing, because alhamdulillah, most of us find ourselves, we were born into Islam. And we've been taught these Islamic principles. Why? Because our parents have made the effort to teach us. Like, if it wasn't for my parents, where would I be? I wouldn't be spewing what I'm saying. It's because of them. So we
have to thank them for all of this beautiful
of course, thank
Allah
subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost. But yes, it's important that we share this knowledge to others, but specifically our children, because knowledge, any action, it starts at where? It starts at home. It all starts at home. Before you start acting a certain way outside, probably the people that live with you, they would have said, oh, I've noticed him acting this way, this one, oh, he's more this, he's more that. And then you see it outside. So we have to start this knowledge, teaching knowledge at home. Start with our children, start with those around us, start with our family members. We become a household that is dedicated to learning knowledge. And then we can go outside, we can go beyond that.
And your children, especially if they're young of age, they learn more from your actions than your actual just words and whatever you're saying.
They'll probably listen to your word, but what did my dad say?
It's like, you don't even do that. Why should I do it? It's like...
and children will pick up on this. They will pick up
things,
on
even if, try to tell your children or, other people, like, oh, you should read this amount a day, you should do this. Instead of saying, you should do this, you should do this. Come on, let's do it now, right? Let's take out the time now. Let's all
actual phrasing, right? You should not actually make it
disassociating yourself from that and just saying you should do this, you should not. Let's do this. We're in this together. At the end of the day, we all have the same destination. We're all trying to achieve.
We both have the same exam, which is, are we going to Jannah or Jahannam? Exactly.
So I think it's very important that we teach our children through actions rather than just words and sitting them down and talking to them. And also another thing you notice, when we are in our homes, in our families, our true self comes out, right? And that's like, even when the Prophet ﷺ was like, I think even in his last khutbah, right? He was saying, like, be careful how you treat the ones who are under you, because only you and your family, you're going to be your true self in there. And it's really hard for you to be good when you're comfortable and nobody's watching and stuff like that, only your family, only your kids and stuff like that. But when you're outside, everybody's watching, you need to keep up this reputation, this delusion, this persona, right? So it's very important that we train ourselves that when we're in our houses, that's where we're the best, right? We're the best of people where we're in the houses. I would say even more so than we're outside, right? Because the people in
they
the family,
live with you.
You're responsible for them, right? Everything they look up to you, you need to provide that necessary education, because at the end of the day, Yawmul Qiyamah, the children are going to be complaining to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
My parents didn't teach me this.
I could have done so much, I could have come the best thing, but my parent didn't tell me to pray. My parent didn't do this. I never saw my parent doing this and stuff like that. So instead of giving ammunition to our children, may Allah protect us all, right? But instead of giving this ammunition to children on Yawmul Qiyamah for them to
attack
come,
attack
us, let's just keep them, give them good ammunition to say, if they're going in Jannah and we still have to be questioning stuff, that they wait at the doors and say, oh Allah, I'm not going in until my parents come in, because they did this, they did this, they did this. That, I'm sure we all want that at the end of the day, right? So I think it's very important that first we show our knowledge to our actions to our children, and that we are the best of people in our households, more than actually outside.
Very well said. I mean, that was beautiful. Almost brings a few tears to my eyes. It's because of the weather. That's the only reason.
Of course.
But no, I think you said that quite beautifully. I must admit, it's very true, because our children, we love our children. We will love our children, and we, have this assumption that there will be a source of goodness for us. So on Yawm al-Qiyamah, for your child to say, oh, my mother, my father did not teach me this, that hurts you. That would hurt you. Of course, you'll be landed in deep water anyways, but that would still be quite painful to be hearing that. So we have to start at home, and you're so right. You live with this person, you breathe the same air, as we all breathe the same air, but you're in the same environment as this person. So we should start from home, and what better way than to start with our children. If, for example, we don't have children right now, if you're married, start with your spouse, for example. If you're not married, for example, start with your own parents, for example. Maybe you might happen to have more knowledge. And that's the whole point. As the generation goes, we should technically be having more knowledge. For example, my parents might not have been as knowledgeable, but they would want me to be more knowledgeable than them. That's the thing about parents. They want the good for you. No one else in this world would want you to be better than them, but your parents do. They want you to have more knowledge. Inshallah, when I have kids, inshallah, by the will of Allah, I would want them to have more knowledge than me. And it should go like that. We shouldn't withhold knowledge from them. We shouldn't be like, okay, calm down. You know,
That's enough
you should be. You're reaching the limits of what you need to know.
You have to overtake me. You relax. Here's some
exactly.
games.
You should be.
Take a break.
Akhi, sit down. Drink some water. It's a bit warm. Drink some water. But no, definitely, you should want them to overtake you in what they know. So I think that's quite important. And as I said, we can go on so much more, but let's move on. I feel like we've really unpacked the first point. The second advice that I jotted down was: do not think that studying is the end, but that it is actually the connection with Allah. And it's interesting because we mentioned on this, studying is not the end. It's not something we can finish. It's an ever continuing journey. We keep going from birth to death. We want to be students of knowledge, and that's why you have like dua, for example. Allah, from until my death, make me a student of knowledge. We can't stop. It's not like daily knowledge reached, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like life knowledge reached, achieved. No, it's a never-ending journey, and it's interesting. It's the connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you have knowledge and it doesn't bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, something's gone wrong somewhere. Something has gone wrong somewhere. The knowledge, which we've mentioned, has to be beneficial. It has to be able to, connect yourself closer and move yourself closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we said, it should be visible on a person that they're a student of knowledge. You don't have to say it. You should literally be able to see it. This person acts different, feels the same, feels different, says and talks in a different way, carries themselves in a different way, and people can see that. But also importantly, it shouldn't just be that knowledge and pass it to other people. It should be that knowledge and your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
100%. Even in the Quran, when Allah speaks about whenever he commands people, right? He says not just believe or assume this, assume. It's know, right? You should know, right? And it's this, when you ask many people, do you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? They say, of course I love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, what do you love about him? What about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes you love him, right? Do you love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Of course, they're going to say, I do. Why? Is there a reason? Do you know anything from the seerah that,
What do you know
exactly
that you love?
How can you love someone
when you don't know them?
If I tell you, my friend Bob, do you like my friend Bob? It's like, well, who's Bob? I don't know anything about Bob, right? Tell me something about Bob that makes me like him. Oh, he's done this, he's done that, he's done that. Okay, now you have a reason to love him. But if you just say, oh, I love him just because it's in the pillars of Iman, I need to love him to be a Muslim. Well, you're not actually loving him because you don't know him.
You need to know.
How can you love someone without knowing them, right? So I think it's very important that we seek this knowledge and it brings us close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
We have to make that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we said, if that knowledge ultimately does not lead you to form a stronger connection, a stronger bond with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is that knowledge? It might as well be batil as well. It might as well be meaningless. But of course, there's knowledge that you should be done to impact people. But the knowledge should impact yourself and your closeness and your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm sure there were other people who could have explained that better, but I think we tried our best. Alhamdulillah. So the next set are like prohibitions or advice of not doing certain things. And, there are many. We won't mention. This is probably where we'll end because there are let me see. There are 20 things. There might have been more, but just a few we'll mention. Oh,
just a few.
30 points we should be able to
speed run.
One of the first one that I will mention is let's see. This one's quite nice. Do not make any major decisions without consulting a senior or someone who is more knowledgeable than you. And this is interesting because in our lives, and we see this nowadays, people want to be their own person. And we're not saying that's wrong, but like, this. I made this decision. I want to be this. I'm choosing this.
Self-made. Independent.
I see what you did. Self-made and independent. But no, the whole thing about Islam is we're a community. We are, a family. We are together. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the times of war, in the times of battles and this sort of thing, he wouldn't just oh, let's do this, and that's it. Nobody questioned it. He would actually seek the counsel of the Sahaba. He would say, "What do you think of this? What's your advice on this?" He doesn't just. They're not necessarily knowledgeable than the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the fact that he asked that, then why can't you? Oh, are you trying to say something now? What are you trying to say? But it's the fact that we are asking people who are more knowledgeable than us, and it all comes to that knowledge. Who has more knowledge? You shouldn't be I was gonna say, like, you shouldn't be seeking knowledge from someone who has lower knowledge from you, but if, for example, you don't have it, then it's worth seeking. But you should definitely be aspiring to someone who has more knowledge, and you should be seeking that knowledge from them, and because they know a little more than you, or they might have a little more experience than you, and you can use that, you can implement that.
Even Allah says, وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ, meaning, like, on top of, like, with every learned person, there's someone more learned on top of him, right? So even if you think, I'm an expert at this topic or whatever it is, not to brag or anything, but there's always going to be somebody that's above you, right? And ultimately, above everyone is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So you should always, first of all, consult with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just look at the categories that Allah has given us in the Quran and see whether whatever decision you're trying to make, whether Allah gives you a clear decision on that. If there isn't a clear decision, or you can't decode the Quran in a way that then makes it clear for you, then you have to go someone more knowledgeable. And it's interesting in the point you made, and specifically said someone senior, right? And if you look in, our society or in our life or whatever however you wanna say it, is that we don't give, like, much respect to the seniors, if that makes sense, right? In other cultures, seniors are very revered, right? You respect them with utmost respect and stuff like that, as if they're your own parents, but they're not, right? We don't even respect our own parents, right? Never mind the other seniors, right? So we should really respect seniors because their life lessons and the stuff that they've been through, even if we sat down, took a course on what life is going to be like and stuff like that, we're never going to understand it the way they understand it. They have so much life experience. If you go to them, ask them for advice, they will give you maybe, 100 things. Even if a few of those are relatable to you and you can somewhat, convert them into your own, decision making, whatever it is. It is important. You shouldn't take 100% of everything they say, because at the end of the day, they're human beings, right? They
but
could
you can
make
take
mistakes.
something from them.
You should never, disregard their advices. You should never see, he's just a senior. What does he know, right? I know more than him. I'm more up to date and stuff like that. I've got Google. I've got this. No, right?
Sheikh Google.
The life lessons that they know, you couldn't, get from anywhere else. So don't just see them as normal people. They all have their whole life stories behind them. They all have had struggles,
these experiences that you would never have come across.
Exactly. So when even this is a mind view of, when you look at people, don't just think you're the main character and you are the only one with existence. You're the only one with thought behind his head. Everybody else is just NPC, right? You're just going around doing your quest. Nothing else matters. No, they have their own things to worry about. The same stuff you're worrying about, they're worrying about. The same stuff you're going through, they've been through. So ask people that they've been through this stuff to help you when you're going through the same thing. Rather than going all the way from scratch and trying to get, how to solve it, and then the next person from scratch, and then the next person. No,
you're not getting anywhere. It's just
let's build from one another and keep
exactly.
improving from one another.
Beautiful, and I love the gaming analogy. Alhamdulillah. I think we'll move on to the next one. These two are kind of linked in a way, and it's basically not being wasteful in a sense. The first one the scholars mention is that do not speak unnecessarily. Let me just see. Where is it? Yes. So don't speak unnecessarily, and do not, if it doesn't have any benefit, then you don't say it. I mean, there's that. If you don't have anything good to say, then don't say it.
That's the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
If it's not good, then hold your tongue. Don't say it. And the next part, which is kind of linked, is what? Don't spend unnecessarily as well. So it's basically this concept of doing things that are unnecessary, doing things wastefully. So you're wasting your words. But people don't think about it, but words in itself, it's like you can think of it as like money. Words itself is like money. If you then use too much words, and if you don't need to say something, and especially if it's harmful, but this always makes me laugh, because they'll be like, "Oh, no offense, but."
Can't take offense now. They've said no offense. They've made it very clear, no offense. All right?
To me, the logic of that does not make sense.
It's the same thing, not to be racist, but
no offense, but it's like, but you said no offense. Then just stop it there.
You
Like you meant offense. You mean to make offense. You mean to be that. How can you say no offense? But it should be.
It's a cheat code. It's a cheat code. It's just.
It shouldn't work, but people still do that. Not to be rude or anything, but if you know that what you're going to say is going to be harmful, detriment to another individual, it's not going to be beneficial. You know, let's say it's not harmful, but if it's not beneficial at all to anyone, if it does not do anything, then.
And this is specifically true when you're like around people of knowledge, or you're around seniors, or around respectable people. Because when you're with your friends or whatever, people younger than you and stuff like that, you can say some things that, you know, they might be unnecessary and stuff like that, just for the sake of it. But if you're in a respected gathering,
especially,
don't speak.
No, that's it. That's the end of the show. Just don't speak. Full stop.
It's very hard for some people, but just be quiet and just listen. Even if you dislike what they're saying, even if, you know, you disagree with what they're saying, even if they're mistaken, right? Because in many cultures, actually, I don't find it to be very common in the culture in our society. But in many cultures, even if the elders make mistakes, the youngest, you don't point it out, especially in public. You don't point it out. So in some cases, you even take the blow just to preserve whatever, you know, respect and dignity that they have, right? So whenever people make mistakes, older, younger, try not to embarrass them. Try not to put them down, because if you are in their shoes, you would want them, you know, privately to consult with you and be like, hey, you did this, but you shouldn't have done that, or stuff like that, right? You should do everything in accordance to where you are.
And, you know, that is very important. And there's someone here who just mentioned people who can't just let somebody talk to the end are annoying. It's hard sometimes. Because you're like, for example, you're talking and someone's like, like, let the person finish what they're saying. And I do get that. It can be quite frustrating. Exactly. It's like, I feel like sometimes people want this to fill the void with words. Like, let the person finish. Oh, he took a break. That must mean he's finished, right? And then I can just put nonsense in that. So if we think about our words as like money, then wouldn't we be smart with the way we use our words, or with the way we spend our words, which is the next point as well. Don't spend unnecessarily. Now, we're not saying don't spend, full stop. We're not saying don't spend on things that's unnecessary, but don't spend unnecessarily. Know what you need, know what is a luxury, and know what you want. You know that distinction. Make those distinction between those categories. What you need, alhamdulillah, you need that. What you want, okay, a few things. But what is like really a luxury, something, you know, you can go without, for example. So don't spend unnecessarily. And as I said, it links together. Don't talk unnecessarily. Don't say things if it doesn't benefit you.
To do with even talking necessarily, a point that just came to mind is that even in the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with many of a hadith, that his form of language when he used to speak to people, if people came to them, you know, give me advice, or tell me one thing I can do, or do, you know, give me some sort of like advice or beneficial knowledge, he wouldn't long it out, right? He wouldn't.
It would be very short, sweet.
Even when Sheikh Mahmoud, when we were on our Umrah trip, he was giving us a story about this lady that used to be very generous, and then he used to be in this like place. Anyways, the story is the fact that once the Prophet ﷺ encountered the woman, and then after he left, when the woman is describing the Prophet ﷺ to her husband, one of the words that he used to describe him is that when he talks, he doesn't make it boringly long, nor does it make it very short to the point where he doesn't get his point across. He speaks very precisely and just in short words, right? Even the hadith like la taghdab, you don't need to long it out. Don't be angry, because if you're angry, then this and this and that.
Literally that.
You won't remember any of that. So this especially goes back to the point of teaching your kids or something like that, right? Make it short, make it concise, that when they go, they can remember. Oh,
I mean, the kids themselves, they put them on a 3-sentence hit.
Exactly, especially today.
They're looking around.
The age of TikTok and all this ADHD and stuff like that. Make it concise, make it short, get your point across. Don't say things unnecessary, you know, that you may go off point and stuff like that. Make it concise. And
it is mentioned that, interestingly, that you say so much that is unnecessary that you forget. But Allah doesn't forget. The angels on your shoulders, they don't forget. They write it down. They're like, you would have just thought, it was nonsense talk. But someone remembers. Someone remembers this. So don't make it so long that you yourself have forgotten. Because if you yourself have forgotten the point you're making, That's a sign up. It's too long. It's just nonsense at this point. So that is really important. Don't spend unnecessarily and don't talk unnecessarily. And as I mentioned, if we think of our words are like money, then we would all be very quite controlled with that. I think most of us, we have a good handle of money in terms of not spending unnecessarily, especially with recession and whatnot. That's out. It's tricky.
Gas prices. Well, yeah, 100%. I agree with spending unnecessarily. Especially, I've noticed this as well. I used to have a very, very bad habit of this. If just
this
I wanted to buy
personal
something.
story, so please listen to the show.
If I wanted to buy something, right, I would have the mindset that I want it as soon as possible, right? So I would spend unnecessarily more money for Prime delivery or whatever it is just to get it early. Even though I have no necessity of it. I could happily wait a few days and it wouldn't impact
urgent.
anything.
It's not life and death.
As soon as I get it, I think, well, even if I waited, he wouldn't have made a difference, right? Because at the end of the day, it's just spending unnecessarily. Your nafs is inclined to things that are easy. Your nafs is inclined to do things in a way
just
that...
click that button.
But yeah, so don't spend things necessarily. Always ask yourself, do I need to spend this? Even if you're saying, okay, I'm doing this just for pleasure, am I, even that, try to control it. Don't go over and we're not saying don't spend, for pleasure and stuff like that. No,
Just
go ahead,
don't do it
enjoy
to
your
the
money.
point of unnecessity.
Of course.
Out of necessity, you know what I mean. Anyways, thank you all very much for listening to our show. Inshallah, we might continue this at another time. Until then, assalamu alaikum.